You've talked a lot about the importance of representation and how that sort of figures into the way that you think about your work, and you've become thought of a little bit as sort of a historian because of your work
Is that
portraying.
true?
Um, well, Thomas Jefferson, Frederick Douglass. You've played some
That's it.
pretty significant people from history. And in the process of that, do you feel like you have learned things that you take forward from the past into the way that you understand what is going on in the country now, what's going on in the culture now?
Uh, I will say that the historical figures I've had the good fortune to portray are thinkers and speakers and writers, um, for the most part. So they're people who left a lot of their thoughts behind, um,
Mhm.
for us to look at. Um, the ways that they were critically examining the the political structures that they lived in, um, are really those are the things that I kind of take with me as something to aspire to or something to stop being so afraid of. We seem to at this moment be really hesitant to allow anybody, but particularly our public figures, to criticize the country we live in, right? Particularly in the US, um, and to be critical of it. And I think that's a mistake. And I think these people that I played knew that it was a mistake. And like, it's not like I agree with most of the shit Thomas Jefferson was saying, but he was hypercritical of the country and felt that it was his responsibility to be that. You know, Thomas Jefferson was in favor of re-examining and potentially changing the Constitution on a regular basis as the country changed, right? Um, but now we use him to justify a kind of strict constitutional fundamentalism that like he wouldn't have supported. So anyway, those are the things that I take with me. But the other thing about playing folks from history and getting to do a lot of research is that you realize that history isn't a thing. It's all there's a perspective on all of it, right? And we are sort of brought up to think of it as facts. We're not learning facts. You're learning uh, what was intentionally left for you and what's been filtered, right? So the working on something like the Good Lord Bird, you realize that the Daughters of the Confederacy really did a number on how we think about the Civil War and that time period. And there's a very intentional reason why we really don't grow up learning about Harper's Ferry very much, right? And that we don't know about John Brown generally as much as we should. That's intentional, and those are things that I think it's important to think about when we think about history. Um,
Well, I should mention that in the Good Lord Bird, that is where you're playing Frederick Douglass. But you also recited an adaptation of a famous Douglass speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. And we have a clip of your reciting that. I believe some of it was written by W. Kamau Bell. But if we can play a little snippet of that and then talk about it in a sec.
mhm.
What to my people is the 4th of July? My people who are failed every day by every country, sleepless in the long night, terrorized by fireworks, we who have cried salt baths for our kin. Look at all we have borne for you: arms, armistice, the sweetest fruits, flesh of children, hidden away from the ugly summer of their own blood. We are on the front lines. Help me, tell me, what do we tell the children of your 4th of July? What is death to a daughter? What is river to a sea? Where is the country where my people are safe?
I mean, listening to those words and then watching those images, I think for some people, they're very unnerving, disturbing, sort of a rewriting of history, so to speak. And yet, they seem to really speak to what you were just talking about. This idea that there is a certain act of patriotism and intellectual rigor to consider facts in their context and not trying to sugarcoat them. Was that part of what drew you to that project?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, filming The Good Lord Bird, I got to recite Douglas's actual Fourth of July speech, which was one of the great experiences I've ever had as an actor. And then a group of my friends who are also my favorite writers had done this adaptation of his speech, to trying to premiere it on the 4th of July, and asked me to recite it. And they're such brilliant writers, and what they did, I think, that is so wonderful is just really, it is Frederick Douglass was saying these same things. And that is a trip. That's a trip when you think about it, because of how little really has changed. That we can still say these same things, right? Despite all of the progress that we've made. And so I think you need to look at the context of that progress and what it's really meant and what it really means and how far do we still have to go. And so I think that's the real usefulness of that piece. And besides the fact that it is beautifully written by a lot of my favorite writers, but I think that Douglas's 4th of July speech is one of the greatest pieces of writing I've ever read. And again, being critical, examining critically the system that he was living in, right?